Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Lindsay and today we are going to be talking about mental health education. Is it a friend or is it a foe? We're going to figure that out throughout this video hopefully. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I invite you to check out my introduction video that'll tell you a little bit about the content that I post in my videos, but in summary, we talk about grief and the grief experience and honor them one emotion at a time. So if you haven't already done so, make sure to subscribe as well as follow me on Instagram and Twitter. You got it? You did it? All right, great. What are we talking about? Yes, so mental health has become a very trendy topic, right? As of recent years, we've become more aware, more accepting, and more open as far as being able to discuss things that perhaps many years ago, perhaps wasn't permissible or acceptable to talk about in open spaces. We have progressed a great deal as far as trying to talk about things that perhaps made people previously feel uncomfortable, but now make people feel more connected. Although we have progressed, when we look at the education system, so I'm talking about schools, we see how there's very little progress or change made to the curriculum or the focus point that is given to students, right? So usually, again, I can talk about the education system in the US. That's the one I'm most familiar with. If you have your own experience that may be different, please do share in the comments below. I want to hear about it. The education system in the US seems to be very regimented on the subject areas of math, science, history, and so forth. So very structured, very black and white. Kids are assessed from a very young age. I believe it's the 3rd grade, if I'm not mistaken, back when I was in school, which perhaps may have been a very long time ago. But from a young age, pretty much kids are compared already on their strengths and their weaknesses. And not for nothing, weaknesses are highlighted a lot more than the kids' strengths. We give them these very cookie cutter subject areas that they must excel in, they must be good at. And when they're not, we kind of bang them on the head where it's like, you're not good, this is why, you have to work hard. You have to work harder in perhaps a subject area that has no interest for you, and perhaps you just don't understand, but it oftentimes neglects other areas that you may actually be good at, may have a strong student. So I talk about that because while things and the times obviously have changed, for some reason the curriculum has not kept up with the changing times, has not kept up with the conversations that we now openly have. And I relate that directly to mental health because yes, my channel is based on grief and talking about death and loss. Mental health is very much a part of that. As kids, we think that kids don't go through anything. We think that kids are just immune to life's experiences. We think that kids can't be stressed. We think that kids cannot be depressed. We think that kids cannot struggle. But guess what? Kids also experience loss. Kids also experience trauma. Kids experience a hell of a lot of things that are oftentimes invalidated for the simple fact that they're a child. You should not care. You should not be stressed. You should not be depressed. You should not, or it's just looked as, oh no, it's just a passing stage for you. So taking it back to the education system, we oftentimes tell kids all the things that they're bad at. Often we also neglect the essence and the humanity of children just because we give them the message of whatever's going on at home, you keep that at home. Here we're here to learn X, Y, and Z, and that's it. And I feel like the curriculum that many schools have, specifically, like I said, in the US, is very much, it takes out the life experience of kids. It takes out the life experience component that we all go through, right? Where it's like, yes, it's great to know all these subject areas, it's great to be able to understand them, but is that where really our education stops? Is that all we're really meant to do as students? Is just learn how to memorize, how to process this information, take tests, pass tests, and continue? Like, is that all our education system is responsible for? And I think that, again, it goes back to even the conversation that I had regarding workplace and how little support workers receive when they experience loss. It's the same in the education system. Students oftentimes receive reactive support. So like if something happens to them or if something happens that affects a great body of students, it's like, okay, we have counseling services, we have this for you, we have that, but what about preventative? What about involving this kind of education as part of the curriculum? Because I know that in the US, 9 out of the 50 states actually have implemented mental health kind of education component to the curriculum. This was initiated 2018, and then by 2019 it was implemented. But yeah, that's only 9 out of 50 states, where of course that's a beginning. But why is it taking so much effort, so much, like, you gotta damn near beg and prove to people time and time again that this is needed? Because, for instance, I remember in college when I was attending several open houses before actually selecting the college that I was going to, a lot of them pride themselves in preparing people or kids for the future, in preparing kids for life, where it's like, do you really prepare people for life, or do you just prepare them to be memorizing machines, to be good at the subjects that you think kids should be good at? But where's the support everywhere else? And it's like, no wonder that in today's age we see an increase in depression, an increase in anxiety, an increase in just overall dissatisfaction of life, because these are the things we don't teach anyone how to talk about, how to sit with, how to even begin to process. We tell kids from a young age, okay, listen, whatever your experience is, we can give you whatever counseling services that the schools may provide, maybe some referrals, but that's pretty much it. That's where the buck stops. But if this is something that impacts more students than not, then why not make this a focus point? Why not include this as part of the curriculum? Because again, we're not raising or teaching robots, we're teaching humans, but yet the more we progress through life, it seems that the farther and farther we become from our own humanity and from our own human experiences. And this brings me back, I actually was reading an article, and the author's name is Ashley Broadwater. She pretty much highlighted how mental illness affects teenagers in the education system. So she spoke about how 17% of young people suffer from mental health conditions. 80,000 teachers in Michigan specifically teach students that have experienced some level of trauma, but those teachers and those schools are not equipped on how to support or understand how to help those students, and therefore are forced to place those students in special needs classes. What better way to tell a kid your experience is your fault, or you're alone in your experience, or you're being shamed for your experience, than to pretty much punish them? Like, okay, because this happened to you, we're gonna put you in a separate class, even though you don't belong there, even though that's not even having anything to do with your education as much as it's having to do with everything that's going on outside of school. This is what we can offer you as far as help. Where what kind of messages are we giving our kids when life happens? Because guess what, guys? Life happens to everyone. It does not care how old you are. It does not care where you are in life. Life happens. The more we try to cover it up, or the more we try to pass the buck, like, that's not my problem, I don't have to teach this, I don't have to talk about this, the more we're just going to continue to be a sick society. We're just going to be sick physically, mentally, spiritually, everything. We're going to be making perhaps physical strides where you can see the achievements, but are those true strides? Are those the things that really mean something for you in the grand scheme of things? So when I read about 80,000 teachers having to deal with students that have experienced trauma and not being equipped. Usually the reason is because of short staff, because of budget, where it's like, come on guys, it is 2021. We can give money and budgets for everything else, but yet we can't give money to what matters, not give money to something as important as education. It's almost saying like, okay, these are the standards just to check the box. Like, oh, kids have to learn, check box. Kids have to do this, check box. But we're not really investing. And oftentimes a lot of that burden in schools is placed upon the teacher's lap, where it's like teachers are already overworked as it is. Teachers have an immense amount of responsibility. And here in Hong Kong, I actually had the experience of teaching for 9 months, and I know now, I know a little bit of what teachers go through as far as having to manage so many things simultaneously and being responsible for everything and receiving little support from the school, right? The excuse of budget cuts or not having enough money or being short staffed, I mean, that has to stop. That has already been the excuse for how many years? Like, come on guys, we have to find some type of solution because we need to do better. We need to do better for our youth that every day seems to be struggling more. Over half of all people dealing with lifetime mental illnesses, usually the onset is before the age of 14. Before the age of 14, and yet it usually takes about 10 years for them to actually receive the diagnosis and receive proper treatment. Where it's like, again, if these are the things that are talked about in school, are open discussions where kids can kind of be involved in their own life experience, in their own studies, in their own just concepts of life, then how much more service are we not giving to the kids at this point? Because we're empowering them, we're telling them, listen, life is going to happen, but that doesn't mean that you are flawed. It doesn't mean that it's your fault. So I also wanted to touch upon suicide rates, because we usually in school systems see kids are, again, committing suicide at a higher rate. It seems to be increasing every single year, and it still is the second leading cause of death for many kids between the ages of 15 to 24. What is going on that more and more kids continue to commit suicide? We can't, again, dismiss it to the individual and say, oh, they were depressed, oh, they were going through a tough time. Okay, oh, how are we as a society, how are we as a collective, as an individual supporting these kids so that they don't feel so isolated in their experience, so that they don't feel like there's something wrong with them, so that they don't feel like whatever's happening to them is abnormal or is only happening to them? Because all we're looking for as kids, as adults, as whatever, is connection. We are looking for connection. We are looking to hear that you too have gone through this or understand me, because then perhaps maybe I feel like less of an alien and more of a human. The more we progress through life, it seems like the farther and farther we get from the actual human experience, and that's not the point. The point is to be human, to talk about, to process our emotions, our experiences, because that's what being human is about. So instead of stigmatizing children and pointing the finger and creating this environment that's just not realistic and making them separate life, school, work, the work environment and the education environment are sending similar messages, where it's like, your life, your problem, like, you deal with it how you best can. But again, are we working with robots or are we working with humans? We are all responsible for helping to support one another through life's experiences. Change obviously does not come overnight, and that's something that I've discussed with people, but it does start with a conversation. How do you feel about your education system, whether you're in it or whether it was a previous one growing up? Do you feel like they made a positive impact when it came to helping you understand or process or begin to understand how to process life whenever you were thrown into the real world? Because that is definitely something that I know many schools pride themselves in. We prepare kids for the real world. How? Tell me, how do you prepare them for the real world? Because if you're going to tell me, oh, I'm going to get your kid to score 100% on this test and score 100% on that test and be proficient on this, no, that's not the real world. The real world is not just about accomplishing and achievement. The real world where we people live in, shit happens. So how are you preparing kids to better process those real life experiences? Do you think that the education system needs some improvement, or do you think it's fine the way it is? Definitely leave me your comments below, send me a private message, whatever you like. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until the next, guys. Thank you.